Hey everybody, I'm Scott. This is I Made a Thing. Today I'm going to show you how I made this guy. Let me tell you a little story.
I saw this sticking out of someone's cardboard recycling bin by the pavement. I've done the idiotic previous owner, the council, and myself a favour and kidnapped it. Oh my god, it lights up on its own! Oh, okay, that makes more sense. On the way home, I stopped at Wickes and picked up some copper pipe and some equal T's and elbows. I knew what I was going to make as soon as I saw that lamp. One last shot of the lamp as it is, and I'm carefully separating the electrics. I'm sure a lot of it will be used again. The centre column needed the end cut off in order to remove it for the base. I'm measuring the outer diameter of the centre column base, so I know how big the guy's arsehole needs to be in order to accommodate it. Drilling the pilot bumhole and widening it a few millimetres at a time, up to about 18 millimetres. Oh, by the way, if you don't use lube, the action can get a little too hot. And the centre column fits like a dirty little glove. After a very brief calculation in my mind, I decided 150 millimetres for the body and 110 millimetres for each leg and arm part, and I started cutting the lengths. I'm now pressing the parts together to take a look at how it might look. They're going to need a neck, so I'm using this obtuse elbow fitting and removing some material so that it can sit on their shoulders. I also made the lower leg parts longer as they look weird. I really like the idea of the Edison style bulbs with their lovely warm filaments like this LED version that doesn't get hot, and this soft light has a good size as well. Wouldn't it be cool if we could shield the reader from the direct glare of the bulb but reflect that same light back up to the ceiling or the walls to increase the ambient lighting? I've made a temporary cardboard and foil book. You can see the difference it makes to the ambient light when I adjust the arms. I've got this old hard disk platter which I've placed on the head for no reason at all. Well, at first I thought it could be cool, but no, it's not. Stop it, move on. I've just picked up some 3.5mm steel to replace the braces, a new screw fitting, and a straight coupling which should accommodate the light fitting better in the neck. 15 quid on some copper effect spray paint. I got the 3.5mm steel to replace the 1.5mm steel braces that keep the legs together because they're bloody awful and also quite short, limiting the lateral expansion. Of course, I need to take off the old parts first, which is brilliant fun. Oh yeah, spread those legs, you filthy strut. I said strut. This right here is why I'm replacing it with fat boy steel. I've decided I'm going to keep the brackets and do some copper electroplating so that it's all copper. I'll keep the parts together, clean them up and get them electroplated. Anyway, the steel will need to be ground down to fit the existing brackets rather than weakening the brackets to accommodate the girth. I've worked out how much I need to cut. I've decided on 250mm, over twice the length of the previous 120mm braces. Drilling the holes for the screws and now working out how much material I need to take off. That 3.5mm steel is coming in a bit slim, so I won't need to take too much off. I will need to take off the corners to allow it some clearance as it rotates. Okay, don't laugh, but I don't have a grinder. But I do have thick skin and a sander. This method made quick work of it, and now I can put it all together and see how much better it is. Oh, hello, chubby. Yeah, I had to find a way to keep my hair off my face. It's too short to get into a ponytail, don't laugh. Time to test out the new bulbs on the new fitting. Passing the power cable through the body and into the fitting that has a cool way to keep it safe even if the cable's pulled tight. I've clearly decided they have two necks. Here's his little Willy. Okay, I'm liking this so far, and here are the new braces extended with the legs distended. Sturdy. I think his neck might need to be just one neck. I like this bulb. I might have really liked the filament glow, but apparently gravity disagrees, and so bye-bye glass and fuck gravity. Come on, little filly, you will light the world, I promise you. Oh, you look like a Tudor. Off with your head. Here's an Edison-style bulb from Poundland. It looks cool, but not energy efficient. It gets really hot. No. Back to the neck reduction. I'm torn between this obtuse elbow and the straight coupling. As the straight coupling better accommodates the light fitting, I think it's going to have to be the one. I'll need to cut away the right amount of material so it can sit on the shoulders. Last time it was a bit rough and I really want a tight fit so I can braze it with a decent joint. That's right, brazing. I don't have a welder and I can't weld. Yet. The light fitting has a lot of excess stuff that isn't any use to me past the safety, so I'm going to remove the flange and the thread, which won't be needed in this project. If I do it nicely, then I can paint it and it shouldn't stand out too much. Surprisingly, the chisel was the most controlled and quickest way of doing this, and also quite therapeutic. I'm sanding with 120 grit and then 220 grit sandpaper to smooth it out, but I'll leave a key for the spray paint. I don't want anything going inside the fitting, so I'm making a temporary plug just to make sure. It wouldn't be an issue if it did, but when it comes to electrics and safety, I don't want to take any risks. Let's give this quality product a go! Shaky, shaky, shaky. Stab, stab, pierce, pierce, and spray! Ooh, this stuff is nice. Bracing the shoulders onto the body. A quick bath and yeah, that'll do. It needs to look a bit rough. Doing the same now but with the hips. And now for the rest of the body, and oh, I love how the colours change with the heat. It's like painting with heat. I like how it can make it look anodised and even brassy. Definitely much better than plain copper. Also really addictive. None of this needs quenching, but it stops it from being hot so I can actually work on it. I want to do something nice with those tripod legs, so I better get them stripped and laid out. Right now I'm removing the parts for that electroplating stuff, which I can start while I crack on with the wood. I'm sanding every piece with 80 grit. Sanding, 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 sanding. And here the same again, but with 220 grit, which makes them nice and smooth, enough for now at least. I'm not happy with the existing channels, they're not even the same length, so I'm going to sort them out now. I'm making the first cuts with a knife, it helps control the material removal bounds. Well, 2 of them are better than the original at least. Sanding the lower legs now in time for some kind of shusugiban, which is the method of sealing and protecting wood by charring it a bit. Or from Wikipedia, yakisugi, a traditional Japanese method of wood preservation. It's referred to in the West as burnt timber cladding and is also known as shusugiban. By slightly charring the surface of the wood without combusting the whole piece, the wood becomes waterproof through carbonisation. It also protects against insects as well as making the wood fire retardant. I'm now sealing this further with some teak oil and immediately I think the wood looks gorgeous. You can't really see it because you're mainly seeing a reflection of the sky in the wood. Now I'm going to add 4 more layers of oil, but I'm going to rub it with 1000 grit while the oil is fresh. This causes the loose wood fibres to mix with the oil and create its own grain filler, and eventually the bumps of grain will disappear. You'll still see the grain detail, but to touch, it will be as smooth as a smooth thing. Here's how it looks after 3 layers. After all that faff giving me RSI, it's time to break out the posh hair product for wood. Look, the British use it for making stolen antiquities look shiny! Some say it's made from the waxy residue from Prince Philip's forehead, but I think it's just VO5 hair wax in a posh cylinder. Why is my knuckle yellow? Now there should be another video up around now where I show you how I made this rusty wood stain, but for now, look at it do magic. It literally changes the wood before your eyes. It actually isn't a stain, there's no pigment, it's just the rust brings out the tannins of the wood on exposure. Keep an eye on the middle one, and now you can see much richer natural colours, and that's not just because it's wet. Here they are after that coat has dried, and here after the second coat is halfway dried. It does look suspiciously like I've actually stained them, but I promise it's just rust and water. The dull wood you see is the residue of the mixture, which I'll wipe off when I apply the teak oil to seal the wood again. Look at that, it's a whole different wood. Not literally, that would sort of be cheating, yet still be more work. Time for making shiny things dull. The story of my life. Let's get buffing. You may have noticed that jar in the background. I can't wait to tell you about it. It's been over a year in the making. That's an egg floating on the top. I won't be taking any further questions at this time. Copper plating by electrolysis is just passing a current from an anode, the copper pipe, through an electrolytic solution, salt water here, to the cathode, which here is just this piece of steel from the original bracing of the tripod. If you have the current too high, then hydrogen bubbles form on the cathode as well, meaning that the copper doesn't uniformly or cleanly adhere to the piece and it looks old and pitted, but that's exactly what I'm going for here, so I'll keep that high current for the other parts as well. A cool side effect of electroplating is that the anode becomes anodized, which gives it a cool look to it in my opinion, and something I'll be using later on to create some contrast. I'm happy with the way that these are coming out. They've got a lot more character than plain and shiny. Now to do these brackets for the upper legs of the tripod. And the screws. I'm just giving these a brush look by pulling them over some sandpaper for some texture. I think I overdid that, so I'll plate it a little bit more. Almost ready for full assembly. Just need to do the main casting, chassis or spider. Look how quickly that was done. Let's get those legs back on and get on with the next job. The neck is currently hot glued on. This is because I needed to hold it in position while I worked out the best angle to have it at. I've removed the wiring, etc. because I'd like to keep the fire and bad, hot, melty stuff away from electrical cables. I've removed the hot glue now, I'm happy with the position, and I've created a temporary brace to hold the neck where I want it to be while I braze it. Now that it's cooled down, I can put the cabling back through it and glue the insulated fitting to the neck. That bloody spray can! The nozzle got gummed up. I couldn't take it back and I wasn't going to waste it, so I decanted it into a glass jar. I'm not even kidding, I filmed and stared at this for over 10 minutes. In fact, I've uploaded a separate video of it because I demand that you also see the hypnotic beauty of the chain reactions taking place. Here's a bit of it sped up. Off with your cheap cravat, Mr. Lampy. And that's the neck all done. Book time! I'm replacing the temporary cardboard book with basswood, 150 by 150 times 2. Sanding this in preparation for fire. Sanding, sanding, always sanding, 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 always sanding. Sorry, not sure what happened there. When this is done properly, it's called shosugiban, but here I'm just charring the wood as equally as I can, trying not to let it catch fire, although it can't really be helped. Here's the footage in actual real time. For a second. I'm sanding it back a bit as there's a lot of loose carbon. I've applied 5 coats of teak oil now with 20 minutes in between, not forgetting the edges. Ah yeah, I love how this looks like some sort of leather-bound book. I've just scored down the middle from each side to separate the front and the back. To hold the book open at a particular angle, I'm going to make my own bracket using some steel I had left over from another project. I need to bend this quite sharply, so I'm scoring it with a Dremel so that when I beat it to the right angle, it bends along the centre. Yay, it worked! So that's the inside. I also need the outside brace, which will double as the book's binding. This leftover piece of copper pipe is perfect, so I'm cutting it in half and doing some quick muff. Half of the pipe diameter is 34mm. With the book angled at 130 degrees, this creates a gap of 12mm, so I can section the spine into 11, 12 and 11. No, wait, the gap's 6mm. 14, 6, 14. If I mark that out on this tape, I can transfer those markings over to the half pipe, flatten the pipe in the vise, and then bend the pipe along those marked lines to create the book spine. Not bad. Just doing a test fit so I can start working out where I'll drill the holes for the bolts. Hang on, what's this I have sticking out of my drawer? A piano hinge! Are you serious? This would have been perfect. This would... Okay, this is why there can't be a god. Anyway, gape time. Gape. 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 To give the spine some texture, I anodized the ends of the spine. That's not even sped up. Did you see how quickly that happened? I have here my dad's old tap and die set. These are used to create the threads for bolts or nuts. I'm using them here so that the inside of the book won't need nuts to hold the bolts through the brace and the book itself. I've got the bolts through, and because of the tapping, I don't need nuts. I'm marking the surplus of the bolt in red so that I can take the bolts out and cut them to just the right length. I'm putting on some reflective tape so I can get an idea of how much light is reflected up, but mainly it's a placeholder until I can work out what the f*** I'm going to do inside the book. Everything looks great, apart from the inside of the book. I found this ancient roll of something, which after some fondling showed itself to be copper wire. Perfect for some creepy little hands. Yes, I did just copper plate some copper. Shut up. 10 fingers! I'm punching the ends where I'll be drilling some holes to insert the fingers, which I'll then braze into place. Oh, hello, Mummy Fox. She's the mum of the cubs that live at the end of my road. She's cool with me. She knows I'm one of the good ones. She almost wants to know what the f*** I'm doing. My drill bit broke, but it's left me just enough to still get some holes going. I had to make a little brace to hold the fingers in place while I did the brazing because they kept falling out. Those are some creepy hands, man. What have I done? No, it's cool. Have some faith. We'll actually have the fingers go through the book, which will keep them from ever catching on anything, and they'll still look like they're holding the book up. I've decided to create the pages inside the book, which will use a light plywood to simulate the pages, host some copper tape indication of words, and hide the copper wire and the bracing that hold the book together. I've cut strips of copper tape to indicate those words on the pages, but also reflect some warm light upwards. If you're wondering what those two indents are, that's where there's a hole in the plywood for hiding where the bolt that holds the book together sits. I like the reflectivity of the copper tape, and the wood itself is light enough to reflect the light upwards as well. I'm gluing up the pieces now, and I'm using a clamp or two to glue the pages to the book cover. I actually have more clamps than this, but as you can see, I'm running a little low on space. That should be enough anyway. We need to get cracking onto the switch now. This dimmer switch works okay, but it's an old one that doesn't know about LED bulbs yet, so although the bulb is dimmable, it doesn't stay constant unless it's fully turned up. I've got a project box here, perfect for incorporating the wall switch into it, but it's going to need cutting down. Not too much though, otherwise the dimmer won't fit inside. About there should do it. I've just scored the line to cut, and now I'm cutting it out to that line. The middle piece that I'm not keeping contains the insert nuts that are used to hold it together, so I'm removing them by putting the bolts into them and then closing the vise on them. Then the bolts push out the nuts from their home, ready to be transplanted into their new home. Drilling the glory hole for the knob. Some rubber tubing seems the perfect size to fit over the nuts and get them held in place inside the larger holes of the back plate. Anything's a push fit if you push hard enough. I'm getting these lines up and they'll live inside the back plate now, with the help of some black super glue. This bottle was about 20 quid, but it's been great for repairs to black things. I've had it for over 4 years. Still good. I'm happy with that. The bolts line up, the dimmer circuit is comfortable inside, and we get in there. But we can't have this as black glossy plastic though, so I'm roughing it up to give the spray paint something to adhere to. Because I'm so amazing at editing, this is actually in the past, so the paint is still in the can. But the can is being a massive cunt. The can must have been dropped in the shop and the nozzle snapped, making it really hard to press in. I did actually spend far too much time fixing the nozzle, but it clogged up by the time I fixed it anyway, so this was the last decent thing I was able to get out of the can in spray form. I think this toolbox was my granddad's if it wasn't my dad's. It was in the loft and I wish I'd found it before I went to Wickes. Hello, big boy. Look, an actual tap with a BSI kite mark. Shame there's no handle. Oh, hello. That's perfect. Let's see this old flux. Yeah, that's gone off. Maybe about 25 years ago. What the fuck? Oh, shit. The rain was pooling on the garage door and it spilled over. Ironically onto some paper towel, the roll I pinched from the toilet at work. Is this the right thing to do? I tipped the garage door forward and Mr. Lampy took the whole weight. Thank you for testing your rigidity. I've tilted the garage door now so rain won't run into the garage. Back to the tap. I can cut the thread off the bonnet and the spindle off the shaft. I'm just saying words after badly googling what parts of a tap are called. Yeah, that's a nice shiny wang flange column. I'm joining the nut from the dimmer into the tap so it can be screwed together through the housing. I used that flux I found, and it shows. But all's well that ends well. I've given the tap some love, which we'll soon see. I need to hollow out the tap spindle so it can interface with the yellow knob of the dimmer switch. Not quite centre, but not too bad. A bit of work and it's all joined together. I clearly cleaned the tap up too much, so I'm copper plating it and anodising the spindle for contrast. Man, I'm happy with that tap. It needs a cap though. Later. Let's get it put together and see. The unit feels light and top heavy, so I'm doing what cheap electronics manufacturers do and add some weights to make it feel more solid. I've just wired in the live wire through the dimmer and it's almost ready. Let's make a little wooden cap for that tap. Yes, I'm using my drill press as a lathe, and that's probably why it needs recalibrating. I love it! The cap even screws on. Now, before we finish, it's important to note that a lot of things went wrong in this project, and it's important that I learn from them. Before putting the steel weights into the switch, at first I tried post-mix, which I now realise must have gone off, and that was such a waste of time. I mean, I could have just mixed it wrong, or I don't know. Didn't read the instructions, but God knows. Also, that fucking spray can. I should have driven back to B&Q and had it swapped over. £15 is a lot for a spray can that doesn't work. I'm glad I managed to salvage it though, and I can use it from the jar. It might have been a hassle driving 20 minutes and having to go through the exchange process, but that would have been a lot quicker than the time that I actually spent working around the issues caused by trying to move on with a broken item. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time to reveal the finished product. And here it is in its temporary home, before somebody doesn't buy it. As you can see, the whole point of the lamp is to be a reading lamp, to prevent the direct glare of the lamp going onto your own book, but providing enough ambience that you can actually still comfortably read from the book that you are trying to read. And it's a lovely, comfortable light.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's show. There'll be plenty more coming, I promise, and I won't keep you waiting as long next time. So from me, Scott, I made a thing. Adios. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to do what you f***ing like. Yeah, share if you like, subscribe if you really like me. But if you don't like it, you don't have to like it. Don't let people tell you what to do. Be happy and stay creative. Bye.